The Blood Wedding, a story of betrayal and revenge. I stood frozen in the dimly lit hallway of the Plaza Hotel, my hand covering my mouth to stifle the scream threatening to escape. Through the half-open door of the coat room, I watched my husband Marcus press my future sister-in-law Serafina against the wall, his hands tangled in her wedding dress as they kissed with a hunger that made my stomach turn. But it was not the sight that shattered me. It was the words. "That stupid family of hers," Serafina whispered between kisses, her voice dripping with venom. "They are all just puppets dancing on strings. Daniel is such a fool, blinded by love. And your wife, God Marcus, how do you stand being married to that pathetic excuse of a woman?" Marcus laughed, a sound I had never heard from him before, cold and cruel. "Anya, she is nothing but a breeding machine, a shield to make me look respectable. The moment she gives me a son, I will discard her like yesterday's trash. But first we need to bleed Daniel dry, take everything from the Miller Corporation, and then we will be free. Free and rich beyond our wildest dreams." My legs gave out. I sank to the floor, my designer dress pooling around me like a puddle of silk and broken dreams. The diamond bracelet Marcus had given me for our anniversary just last month felt like a shackle around my wrist. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of believing I had found my soulmate. All of it was a lie. But before you hear what happened next, before I tell you how this story ends, I need you to do something for me. If you have ever felt betrayed, if you have ever been used by someone you trusted, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to hear more stories like mine, and comment below telling me what you would do in my situation, because what I did next changed everything. Now let me take you back to the beginning to show you how I ended up on that floor, my whole world crumbling around me. 6 months earlier, my life looked perfect from the outside. I was Anya Miller, youngest child of the prestigious Miller family owner of Miller Corporation, one of the leading architectural firms in New York. My brother Daniel was the golden boy, charming and brilliant, destined to take over the family business. I was the quiet one, the peacemaker, the girl who always tried to make everyone happy. I met Marcus Hartley at a charity gala 3.5 years ago. He was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, handsome, with dark hair that fell just right across his forehead and green eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. He was an architect, ambitious and talented, working his way up at a rival firm. We talked for hours that night about design philosophy, about creating spaces that made people feel at home, about our dreams for the future. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Marcus was attentive, romantic, always knowing exactly what to say to make me feel special. He brought me coffee every morning, remembered the smallest details about my day, and made me laugh when work stress threatened to overwhelm me. My father, who passed away 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack, had approved of Marcus. My mother, Catherine, adored him, calling him the son she never had. Even Daniel, usually protective and skeptical of my boyfriends, welcomed Marcus into the family with open arms. We married in a small ceremony in the Hamptons, intimate and beautiful. I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. Marcus moved into my penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. He got a position at Miller Corporation, working his way up quickly. I attributed his rapid rise to his genuine talent, never questioning how convenient it was that he suddenly had access to all our proprietary designs and client lists. I threw myself into being the perfect wife. I cooked his favorite meals even after exhausting 14-hour days at the office. I attended every work function, playing the gracious hostess. When Marcus suggested I should focus on starting a family rather than pursuing that promotion I had been working toward, I convinced myself he was right. Family came first. I could always advance my career later. Looking back now, I can see the red flags I ignored. The way Marcus would dismiss my opinions in meetings, making me feel foolish in front of colleagues. How he would disappear for hours with vague explanations about meeting clients, coming home with perfume that was not mine clinging to his collar. The times I caught him looking at our financial statements with an expression I could not quite read, quickly closing his laptop when I entered the room. But I pushed those doubts down deep down where they could not hurt me. Because admitting something was wrong would mean admitting I had made a mistake, and I had spent my entire life trying to be perfect, trying to prove I was worthy of the Miller name. Then 6 months ago, Daniel announced his engagement to Serafina Blackwood. She was stunning with flowing black hair, porcelain skin, and a smile that could light up a room. She worked in fashion, running a boutique consulting firm that helped luxury brands expand into new markets. Daniel was head over heels, and I was happy for him. Finally, my serious workaholic brother had found someone who made him smile. I welcomed Serafina into our family. I took her shopping, introduced her to my friends, helped her plan the wedding. She seemed sweet, if a bit reserved. Sometimes I would catch her looking at Marcus in a way that made me uncomfortable, but I told myself I was being paranoid, projecting my own insecurities onto innocent interactions. The wedding planning consumed our lives for months. Serafina wanted everything to be perfect and no expense was spared. Daniel was so in love he would have given her the moon if she asked for it. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in June at the Plaza Hotel, the same place our parents had married 30 years ago. As the wedding approached, Marcus became increasingly distant. He worked late almost every night, came home smelling of expensive wine and excuses. When I tried to talk to him about it, he would snap at me, accusing me of being clingy and insecure. He said the stress of a major project at work was getting to him and I needed to be more understanding. So I swallowed my hurt and tried harder to be supportive. The day before the wedding, I overheard Marcus on the phone in his study. I had come home early from the final dress fitting, wanting to surprise him with his favorite takeout from the Italian place in Brooklyn. The door was ajar and his voice carried into the hallway. "No, she suspects nothing. Anya is too naive, too trusting. After tomorrow, once we are in the clear, we can move forward with phase 2. Caldwell promised us controlling shares once Miller Corporation goes under. We just need to be patient a little longer." My heart stopped. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. Caldwell. Phoenix Holdings, our biggest competitor, the company that had been trying to buy us out for years that my father had fought against until his dying day. I did not understand the full scope of what Marcus was planning, but I knew enough to be terrified. That night, I could not sleep. I lay next to my husband, this stranger wearing Marcus's face, and wondered what I should do. Tell Daniel. But it was the night before his wedding. How could I ruin his happiness with my suspicions? I had no proof, just an overheard phone call that could mean anything. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. I decided to wait until after the wedding. I would talk to Daniel when he returned from his honeymoon. Together, we would figure out what was happening. I just needed to get through one more day. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day in New York. The Plaza Hotel was transformed into a fairy tale with white roses and crystal chandeliers and music that made your heart soar. Serafina looked like a vision in her custom Vera Wang gown, and Daniel could not stop smiling. I stood in my pale blue bridesmaid dress, Marcus beside me in his tailored suit, and tried to ignore the knot of dread in my stomach. The ceremony was beautiful. I cried, but not for the reasons everyone thought. I cried for the innocence I was losing, for the trust that was crumbling inside me like old stone. Marcus held my hand during the vows, and I wondered if he could feel how cold my fingers were, how my whole body had gone numb. The reception was in full swing when I decided I needed a moment alone. The champagne, the laughter, the endless stream of congratulations, it was all too much. I told Marcus I was going to touch up my makeup, and I slipped away from the ballroom into the quieter corridors of the hotel. That was when I heard them. Serafina's laugh, breathy and intimate, coming from the coat room down the hall, and Marcus's voice, low and urgent. I should have walked away. I should have protected myself from what I was about to see. But some instinct for self-preservation, or maybe just morbid curiosity, made me move closer. I watched them through that half-open door. I watched my husband, the man I had trusted with my heart and my future kiss, another woman with a passion he had never shown me. And I heard the words that would haunt me forever. "That stupid family of hers. They are all just puppets dancing on strings. Daniel is such a fool, blinded by love, and your wife, God Marcus, how do you stand being married to that pathetic excuse of a woman? Anya. She is nothing but a breeding machine, a shield to make me look respectable. The moment she gives me a son, I will discard her like yesterday's trash. But first, we need to bleed Daniel dry, take everything from the Miller Corporation, and then we will be free. Free and rich beyond our wildest dreams." "You are taking such a risk. What if everything falls apart, and I hate the idea of you living with her, sleeping in the same bed?" "It won't be much longer. Caldwell has everything in place. Once we get Daniel to sign over the contracts next week, once the merger goes through, the company will be ours to gut from the inside. Then we can be together, really together. No more hiding, no more pretending. They kissed again, and Serafina moaned softly. I love you so much. This was the best plan ever. Marrying Daniel to get close to the company, you marrying his pathetic sister to gain their trust. We are going to be so rich, Marcus, so powerful. I did not remember leaving. One moment I was standing in that hallway, my hand pressed to my mouth to stop the screaming, and the next I was stumbling through the crowd, my vision blurred with tears. I collided with someone nearly falling, and strong hands caught my shoulders, steadying me. Anya, what's wrong? You look like you have seen a ghost. It was Daniel, my brother, my protector, looking at me with such concern that I almost broke down completely. But before I could speak, before I could pour out the whole horrible truth, he leaned down and whispered in my ear, his voice so cold it sent chills down my spine. I know, I have known for 3 months, and the real show is about to begin. He pulled me into a private room off the ballroom, the groom's suite where he had gotten ready that morning. He locked the door behind us and guided me to sit on the leather sofa. My legs were shaking so badly I could barely stand. You knew, my voice came out as a croak, broken and raw. You knew Marcus and Serafina were together. I knew everything. The affair, the plan to destroy Miller Corporation Caldwell's involvement. I have been investigating for months. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed me photograph after photograph. Marcus and Serafina at a hotel in Tribeca. Serafina meeting with Mr. Caldwell at a restaurant in Midtown. Bank statements showing transfers of money from a Phoenix Holdings account to Serafina. Emails detailing their plan to sabotage our biggest projects, to steal our clients, to bankrupt us from the inside. How long? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. How long have they been planning this? Since before you married him. Marcus approached Serafina about a year before he met you at that gala. Caldwell recruited them both, promised them positions in his company and a percentage of the profits once Miller Corporation went under. Meeting you was not an accident, Anya. It was a calculated move, and Serafina pursuing me was part of the same plan. The room spun. I pressed my hands to my temples, trying to process what Daniel was telling me. Why did you not tell me? Why did you let me keep living with that man, sleeping beside him, thinking he loved me? Because I needed time to gather evidence, and because I needed them to feel safe, to think their plan was working. Caldwell is not just after our company, Anya. There is something bigger here, something that goes back to before we were born. I needed to draw him out to make him confident enough to make a mistake. He sat beside me and took my hand. I am so sorry you had to find out this way. I was going to tell you after the wedding, after tonight was over, but maybe it is better that you saw it with your own eyes. Now you know the truth, and you can be part of what happens next. What happens next? I looked at my brother, really looked at him for the first time. His eyes were hard, determined nothing, like the lovesick groom I had seen at the altar just hours ago. You married her. Daniel, you actually married her. A marriage based on fraud can be annulled. I have lawyers ready to file the paperwork first thing Monday morning, but first I am going to give Serafina and Marcus and Caldwell the wedding present they deserve. He explained his plan, then laying it out step by step. The cameras he had hidden throughout the venue, the audio recordings he had been collecting for weeks, the financial forensics expert who had traced every dirty dollar back to Caldwell, the police officers already stationed in the hotel waiting for his signal. I need you to go back out there and pretend everything is fine. Can you do that? I know it is asking a lot, but I need Marcus and Serafina to think they are safe for just a little longer. Can you be strong for me, for our family? I looked down at my hands at the wedding ring Marcus had slipped on my finger 3 years ago while lying through his teeth. Then I thought about my father, about the company he had built from nothing, about the legacy he had entrusted to us. I thought about every sacrifice I had made, every dream I had deferred, every piece of myself I had given away, trying to be worthy of love that was never real. And I felt something inside me shift, something cold and hard, crystallizing where my heart used to be. Tell me what to do. I returned to the reception with my mask firmly in place. I smiled and laughed and danced. I stood beside Marcus and played the role of the devoted wife while inside I was screaming. Every touch of his hand made my skin crawl. Every lie that fell from his lips felt like acid on my ears. but I held on, counting down the minutes until Daniel's signal. The speeches began after dinner. The maid of honor gave a tearful toast about true love. The best man told embarrassing stories from Daniel's college days. And then, just as Serafina and Marcus thought they had gotten away with everything, Daniel stood up with a microphone in his hand and a smile that did not reach his eyes. Thank you all so much for being here to celebrate this special day. Marriage is about trust, about honesty, about building a life together based on truth and respect. At least that is what I always believed. The room went quiet. Something in Daniel's tone made people shift uncomfortably in their seats. But sometimes the person you think you know is not who they really are. Sometimes the face they show you is just a mask hiding their true intentions. Serafina stood up, her face pale. Daniel, darling, what are you talking about? Are you feeling okay? I am feeling better than I have in months, actually. You see, I recently learned that the woman I married today has been lying to me about everything. Her past, her feelings, her reasons for being with me. Should I tell them, Serafina, or would you like to? Before she could respond, Daniel nodded to someone in the back of the room. The lights dimmed, and suddenly the large screens that had been displaying happy photos of the bride and groom all evening flickered to life with new images. A middle-aged woman appeared on the screen, elegant but clearly emotional. My name is Rose Whitmore, and I am here to tell you all the truth about Serafina Blackwood. 5 years ago, she was engaged to my son Thomas. They were together for 6 years, planning their wedding, building a life together. And then she met a richer man, a more connected man, and she left Thomas without explanation, without remorse. She took the ring he had saved 3 years to buy and sold it to fund her new lifestyle. She destroyed my son, broke his heart so completely he still has not recovered. Mrs. Whitmore's face disappeared, replaced by photos. Serafina and Thomas together, smiling and happy. Their engagement announcement. Text messages where Serafina called Thomas her soulmate. And then messages between Serafina and an unknown number. Messages that detailed how she had been using Thomas, how she was looking for someone richer, someone who could give her the lifestyle she deserved. Serafina's face had gone from pale to green. She clutched the edge of the table, swaying slightly. This is insane. Daniel, you cannot believe this. That was years ago. I was young and confused. I love you now, only you. Do you? Daniel's voice was soft, almost gentle. Then maybe you can explain these. The screens changed again. Now they showed security footage from hotel hallways. Serafina and Marcus kissing in a corridor, meeting in a hotel lobby, getting into the same car. Video after video, damning and undeniable. The crowd gasped. I heard my mother cry out and my aunt clutching her pearls in shock. Marcus had gone rigid beside me, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. But maybe that is not even the worst part. Daniel continued, his voice growing harder. Maybe the worst part is that this affair, this betrayal, is not even about love. It is about greed. It is about destroying my family for profit. He gestured again, and the screens filled with documents, bank statements, emails, text messages, every piece of evidence laid bare for 200 guests to see. The plan to bankrupt Miller Corporation, the meetings with Caldwell, the promises of money and power, every ugly mercenary detail. That stupid family of hers! Serafina's voice rang out from the speakers, the audio recording from earlier that evening. They are all just puppets dancing on strings. Daniel is such a fool, blinded by love. Marcus's voice followed. Anya, she is nothing but a breeding machine, a shield to make me look respectable. The moment she gives me a son, I will discard her like yesterday's trash. The silence in the room was deafening. Then all at once, everyone started talking, shouting. Some guests stood up, faces red with anger. Others sat in stunned disbelief. My mother was crying, surrounded by her sisters, and at the center of it all, Serafina and Marcus stood like statues, their faces masks of horror and rage. I stood up slowly, drawing every eye in the room. When I spoke, my voice was steady, clear, cutting through the chaos like a knife. You called me a breeding machine. You called me pathetic. You said I was nothing but a shield for your ambitions. I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on the table with a soft clink. But you were wrong about one thing, Marcus. I am not a puppet. I am not a fool, and I am not someone you can use and discard. I turned to face the crowd, to face my family and friends and colleagues. I want everyone here to know that I had no idea about any of this Until tonight. I trusted Marcus completely. I loved him with everything I had, and he played me for a fool. But I am done being the victim. I am done letting people use my kindness as a weakness. The room erupted in applause. People I had known my whole life stood up surrounding me with support and love. My mother broke through the crowd and pulled me into her arms, and I finally let myself break sobbing against her shoulder. But the show was not over yet. Daniel raised his voice again. There is one more person we need to talk about tonight, because Serafina and Marcus are just pawns in a much bigger game. The real mastermind behind this plot is sitting among us. He pointed across the room and every head turned to follow his finger. There at a table near the back sat Mr. Caldwell. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, silver-haired and impeccably dressed, the picture of respectability. He had been a fixture at society events for decades, the head of Phoenix Holdings, one of the most powerful men in New York real estate. Mr. Caldwell has been trying to destroy Miller Corporation for 20 years. He has tried hostile takeovers, he has tried stealing our clients, and when none of that worked, he recruited two people desperate enough and greedy enough to infiltrate our family. He promised them wealth and power if they could bring us down from the inside. Daniel held up a thick folder. I have documents proving Mr. Caldwell's involvement in corporate espionage, bribery, and conspiracy to commit fraud, and I have given copies of all this evidence to the police. As if on cue, 4 plainclothes officers moved through the crowd, badges out. They reached the head table and placed Marcus and Serafina under arrest, reading them their rights as guests scrambled to pull out their phones and record everything. Then they moved to Caldwell's table. Mr. Caldwell stood, his face a mask of rage. You have no idea what you have done, boy. No idea what you are dealing with. This is not over. You are right, Daniel said quietly. It is not over, because you took something from me a long time ago, something far more important than a company. And now, finally, I am going to take it back. As the police led Caldwell, Marcus, and Serafina away in handcuffs, as the wedding dissolved into chaos and shock and 100 whispered conversations, I stood there feeling strangely empty. 3 years of my life gone. 3 years of believing in a lie, of giving everything to someone who saw me as nothing but a tool. Daniel came to stand beside me. Are you okay? No, but I will be. I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders. What happens now? Now we rebuild. We make Miller Corporation stronger than ever. We show the world that the Miller family cannot be broken. And that is exactly what we did. The next few months were brutal. The scandal was all over the news. Miller Corporation's stock took a hit as investors panicked about the attempted sabotage. But Daniel and I worked around the clock meeting with clients, reassuring partners, proving that we were stronger than ever. We fired everyone Marcus had brought into the company, audited every project, and rebuilt our reputation from the ground up. Marcus, Serafina, and Mr. Caldwell were indicted on multiple charges, including fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. Marcus tried to plead for mercy, claiming he had been manipulated by Caldwell, but the evidence was overwhelming. They all faced years in prison. I filed for divorce immediately. The process was quick since Marcus had no legitimate claim to any of my assets. When his lawyer tried to argue for alimony, citing the 3 years Marcus had spent supporting me emotionally, I submitted the audio recordings of him calling me a breeding machine. The judge dismissed his claims without hesitation. But even as we rebuilt the company, even as justice was served, I felt hollow inside. I threw myself into work, staying at the office until midnight, taking on projects that required all my focus and energy. I was functioning, but I was not living. My mother noticed, of course. Catherine Miller never missed anything when it came to her children. 6 months after the wedding disaster, she sat me down in the sunroom of her Upper East Side townhouse and held my hands. You need to get away, darling. You need to heal. You cannot work yourself to death trying to forget what happened. I am fine, Mom, really. Work is good for me. It keeps me focused. Work is consuming you. You have lost weight, you look exhausted, and I have not seen you smile, really smile in months. Please, Anya, take some time for yourself. Go somewhere beautiful and quiet. Let yourself feel everything you have been pushing down. I wanted to argue, but I was so tired. Tired of pretending to be strong. Tired of holding myself together. Tired of being the victim of Marcus's cruelty and my own naivety. So I went to Napa Valley. I rented a small cottage on a vineyard surrounded by rolling hills and endless rows of grapevines. It was early fall, and the leaves were just beginning to turn gold and crimson. The air smelled of earth and grapes and something indefinable, something like hope. I spent my days walking through the vineyards, reading in the garden, and slowly, painfully letting myself process everything that had happened. I cried more in those first 2 weeks than I had in the entire previous year. I cried for the innocent girl who had believed in fairy tales and happy endings. I cried for the 3 years I had wasted on a man who never loved me. And I cried for the future I had imagined, the children I had dreamed of, the life that would never be. But gradually, as the days passed and the leaves continued to fall, I started to feel something else. Not happiness, not yet, but maybe the possibility of happiness. A lightness I had not felt in years, as if a weight I did not know I was carrying had finally been lifted. I was at a farmer's market in town buying fresh vegetables and artisan bread when I literally ran into him. I had been distracted looking at a display of handmade jewelry, and I stepped backward right into someone's chest. Apples went flying everywhere, rolling across the cobblestones. "Oh God, I am so sorry!" I dropped to my knees, scrambling to gather the scattered fruit. "No harm done. I should have been watching where I was going." The voice was deep, warm, with a hint of amusement. I looked up and found myself staring into the kindest eyes I had ever seen. They were hazel flecked with gold, and they crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with sandy brown hair and a face that was more interesting than handsome, full of character and laugh lines. We both reached for the same apple, and our hands touched. I pulled back as if burned, suddenly hyper-aware of every point of contact. "I really am sorry," I said again, feeling my cheeks heat. I was not paying attention. Neither was I. I was trying to decide between Honeycrisp and Gala, and apparently that is too complicated a task to do while walking. He grinned, and something inside my chest fluttered. "I am David, by the way. David Chin. Anya Miller." We helped each other pick up the rest of the apples, and then somehow we were walking through the market together. David was easy to talk to, with a quick wit and a quiet confidence that put me at ease. He told me he was a police officer in the nearby town of St. Helena, originally from Sacramento, who had moved to Napa 5 years ago for the slower pace of life. "What brings you to wine country?" he asked as we stopped at a booth selling local honey. "Running away?" I said before I could stop myself. Then I laughed, embarrassed. "Sorry, that is probably too much information for someone I just met." "Not at all. The best conversations are the honest ones." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "I came here running away too after my divorce." Sometimes you need to put distance between yourself and your pain before you can start to heal. We talked for hours that day, wandering through the market and then sitting on a bench overlooking the valley, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. I told him about Marcus, about the betrayal, and the wedding disaster, things I had not talked about with anyone except Daniel and my therapist. David listened without judgment, without trying to fix everything or offering platitudes about time healing all wounds. When the market closed and we finally parted ways, he asked if he could see me again. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to protect myself, to not trust, to not risk getting hurt again. But something about David made me want to take that risk. "I would like that," I said softly. That first date turned into a second, then a third. David took me hiking through the hills to small family-owned restaurants where the pasta was handmade and the wine flowed freely, to concerts in town squares where we danced under the stars. He was patient with my fears, never pushing, never demanding more than I was ready to give. When I flinched away from his touch, he gave me space. When I needed to talk about Marcus, about the pain that still felt fresh and raw, he listened. Slowly, carefully, I learned to trust again. Not blindly this time, not with the naive faith I had given Marcus, but with my eyes open, aware of my own worth, ready to walk away at the first sign of dishonesty or disrespect. But those signs never came. David was exactly who he appeared to be, a good man who had been hurt and was trying to build a new life. He did not play games, did not manipulate, did not try to change me into someone else. He liked me exactly as I was, complicated, damaged, still healing. 6 months after that first collision in the farmer's market, David told me he loved me. We were sitting on the porch of my cottage, watching fireflies dance in the vineyard, drinking wine, and talking about everything and nothing. The words came out of him simply, without drama or grand gestures. I love you, Anya. I have loved you since the moment you tried to apologize for knocking apples out of my hands. You do not have to say it back. I just needed you to know. I looked at this man who had given me space to heal, who had never once made me feel like I was broken or damaged or less than whole. And I realized that somewhere along the way, among the vineyards and the laughter and the quiet moments of peace, I had fallen in love too. I love you too, I whispered. I did not think I could not after everything, but I do. We were married 2 years later in a small ceremony in the vineyard where we had met. Daniel was there and my mother and a handful of our closest friends. David's family came up from Sacramento warm and welcoming and so different from the cold society circles I had grown up in. I wore a simple dress ivory rather than white with wildflowers in my hair. There was no drama, no betrayal, just pure simple happiness. We had a daughter the following year, a beautiful baby girl with David's hazel eyes and my dark hair. We named her Ava, and she became the center of our world. I split my time between Napa and New York, working remotely for Miller Corporation while raising our daughter in the peace and quiet of wine country. Daniel, too, had found happiness. He met Julia, a kindergarten teacher at a fundraiser for children's literacy. She was everything Serafina was not: genuine kind, unimpressed by wealth or status. They married a year after David and I did, and they had a son, Ethan, who became Ava's favorite playmate. Miller Corporation thrived under our leadership. We expanded into sustainable design, creating eco-friendly buildings that prioritized people and planet over profit. We hired based on talent and integrity, creating a company culture built on trust and respect. Everything Marcus and Serafina had tried to destroy, we rebuilt stronger and better. But the story was not over yet. On Ava's 3rd birthday, a package arrived at our Napa home. It was wrapped in silver paper with a platinum bow, and it contained a delicate platinum bracelet sized for a toddler with tiny diamonds spelling out her name. The card inside read simply, "For my granddaughter, with all my love." My hands shook as I read those words. The handwriting was familiar, though I had not seen it in almost 30 years. It was the same elegant script that had been on the notes accompanying the white roses that had appeared at my office building a few years ago, flowers I had assumed were from someone connected to Marcus, perhaps sent to intimidate or unsettle me. "What is it?" David came up behind me. Ava balanced on his hip, chocolate frosting from her birthday cake smeared on her cheek. "I think my mother sent this, not Catherine, my biological mother." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into an investigation. I hired private detectives, pored over old records, and finally pieced together the truth that had been hidden from Daniel and me for our entire lives. Catherine Miller was not our birth mother. Our real mother was Adrienne Rivas, the CEO of Rivas International, one of the world's most prestigious jewelry companies. 28 years ago, when Daniel was 3 and I was just a baby, Adrienne had been targeted by a rival company. There had been an accident, an explosion at one of her factories, and Adrienne was reported dead. But she had survived. Catherine, her best friend and business partner, had helped her fake her death and flee the country because the rival company behind the attack was not finished. They wanted Rivas International, and they would stop at nothing to get it, including targeting Adrienne's children. So Adrienne went into hiding, leaving her babies with the only person she trusted completely. Catherine raised us as her own, giving up her own chance at a family and a normal life to protect us. And Adrienne watched from afar, sending anonymous gifts, subtle help when we needed it, never able to reveal herself for fear of putting us in danger. The rival company was Phoenix Holdings, and the man behind it all was Mr. Caldwell. He tried to kill her. I told David as we sat up late one night, Ava asleep upstairs, the evidence spread across our dining room table. He orchestrated the factory explosion, and when he realized Adrienne might have survived, he spent years hunting for any trace of her. That is why Catherine was so careful, why we grew up relatively sheltered despite our wealth. She was protecting us from him. And when Marcus and Serafina tried to destroy Miller Corporation, that was Caldwell trying to finish what he started. If he could not have Rivas International, he would destroy Adrienne's children instead. It was always about revenge. Armed with this knowledge, with the journals my biological father had kept documenting Caldwell's threats with audio recordings Adrienne had made before she disappeared, and with documents from a safety deposit box in Switzerland that Adrienne had maintained all these years, we built our case. Daniel and I, working with David and a team of lawyers and investigators, spent 6 months compiling evidence. We traced every crime Caldwell had committed over the past 30 years, from corporate espionage to attempted murder, and when we had everything we needed, we went public. The press conference was held at Miller Corporation headquarters. Every major news outlet was there, cameras rolling, reporters hungry for the story. I stood at the podium with Daniel beside me, and I told the world the truth about our mother, about Caldwell's crimes, about the 28 years Adrian Rivas had spent in hiding. My mother was forced to abandon her children to keep them safe, I said, my voice steady even as tears streamed down my face. She gave up everything, her company, her family, her life, because one man's greed and jealousy knew no bounds. But today that ends. Today we bring him to justice. The evidence was overwhelming. Caldwell was arrested again, this time on charges of attempted murder, racketeering, and a dozen other crimes. His empire, built on lies and blood money, crumbled. Phoenix Holdings went bankrupt, its assets seized, its executives facing their own criminal investigations. And Adrian came home. She arrived quietly, no fanfare or press. Just a woman in her 50s, elegant and graceful, with eyes that looked like mine and Daniel's. We met in Catherine's townhouse, the four of us together for the first time as a family. "I am so sorry," were the first words Adrian said, her voice breaking. "I am so sorry I could not be there for you. I am so sorry you grew up without knowing who you really were." I crossed the room and took her hands. "You gave up everything to keep us safe. You made the hardest choice a mother can make. We have nothing to forgive." We cried then, all of us holding each other and mourning the years we had lost, while also celebrating the future we now had together. Adrienne got to meet her grandchildren, got to hear them call her grandmother. Adrienne got to be part of their lives in a way she had never dreamed possible. She returned to Rivas International, working with her old board of directors to reclaim her position, and she worked with Daniel and me to establish the Adrian and Catherine Foundation, using the wealth from both our families to help children who had been orphaned or endangered by corporate crime. As for Marcus Serafina and Mr. Caldwell, they were all convicted and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Marcus tried to reach out to me once from prison, a letter full of apologies and excuses and pleas for forgiveness. I read it once, then burned it. He was part of a past I had left behind, a chapter of my life that was closed forever. 2 years after Adrian's return, on a perfect spring morning in Napa, I stood in our vineyard watching Ava chase butterflies with Ethan while David pushed our new baby, a son we had named Adrian after my mother, in his stroller. My mother, both of them, sat on the porch drinking wine and laughing. Daniel and Julia were there too, and the air was full of joy and love and peace. I thought about the girl I had been, the one who had believed in fairy tales and happy endings, who had trusted blindly and given her heart away without reservation. I thought about the woman I had become, scarred, but stronger, wary, but still capable of love, broken and rebuilt into something more beautiful than before. I had been betrayed, used, discarded. I had been called a breeding machine, a puppet, a fool, but I had risen from those ashes. I had reclaimed my power, my dignity, my life, and I had learned that real love, true love, is not about grand gestures or perfect moments. It is about showing up every day, about choosing kindness and honesty, about building something together that can weather any storm. Marcus had tried to break me, but he had only made me stronger. Caldwell had tried to destroy my family, but he had only brought us closer together, and in the end, the villains got their justice and the heroes got their happy ending. Not because life is a fairy tale, but because we fought for it. Because we refused to be victims. Because we knew our worth and demanded that others recognize it too. The road from that terrible night at the Plaza Hotel to this peaceful morning in Napa had been long and painful, but every step had been worth it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt and fear, they had all led me here, to this life, to this family, to this hard-won happiness. And I would not change a single thing. Your past does not define you. Your pain does not own you. And the people who tried to break you do not deserve a single moment of your future. Take back your power. Tell your truth. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you are less than you are. So tell me, have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because you finally realized they never loved you back? Have you ever taken back your power from someone who tried to control you? Drop your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own journey from victim to survivor, Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. Your story matters, your voice matters, and you are stronger than you know.